Hello, everybody, and welcome to GT Live. My name is Brandon Jones. I'm your host again. Thank you so much to Mr. Kyle Bossman, who's going to be in the community chat today getting your questions, which our guest will answer. But Kyle hosted GT Live last week, and I really appreciate it, Kyle. Thank you for filling in. Today we are playing Ultra Street Fighter 4, almost called Ultimate Street Fighter. I'm sure there'll be one of those one day, which is being played by Mr. Brad Ellis, Mr. Mike Huber, and Mr. Ben Moore there on the couch. They will be passing the controller. I want to know a definitive winner by the end of the day. I want stats. Okay, I don't want you guys just kind of lollygagging around modes and stuff like that. I would like to establish in the next hour which of the three of you is superior at Street Fighter. Can we get to that?
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Sure.
We're going to be giving away codes for Not a Hero. We have 5 codes. Mr. Kyle Bossman is going to be in chat, so you're going to want to direct all of your questions at him. We recently reviewed that. Mr. Mike Huber got a kick out of Not a Hero, so hopefully you guys will too. And we'll come up with some good questions for our guest today, Mr. Shane Satterfield, who, according to this, seems like you were a former GameSpot G4 Tech TV employee.
Yes, I did work at those publications.
You've been everywhere.
I have, yes. There's also this other little place I worked at for a little while called GameTrailers.
They're not around anymore.
Yeah, that's what I've been hearing, but I refuse to believe it.
They have completely fallen off the relevant ship.
I completely disagree with that.
They're waiting out in the ocean. Yeah, so you used to tell me what to do, but now I tell other people what to do.
And now you're telling me what to do. You're like, get in your seat.
Former editor-in-chief of GameTrailers.com, Mr.
Yeah.
Shane Satterfield, and now working at Siftd.net, which...
working too much at Siftd.net.
which wanted to wait to have you on the show until it went live, and we seem to have timed it out pretty perfectly.
It worked out perfect. You tried to get me on the show like a few weeks ago, and as it turned out, the site ended up getting delayed again. And it launched just a couple days ago to the public, and the timing worked out great to come on. So thanks for having me.
So,
good to be back in my old. Well, actually, these aren't my stomping grounds.
Right? Yeah.
This is a new building, but it's good to be back around all you guys and all the people I worked with for all those years.
Thanks for coming on, Shane.
Yeah.
So I tried to get. So I know I've known Brent Phillips for a little over a decade now, who built your website.
Yeah.
I've been poking and prodding him forever, like, get me on the alpha, come on, and he never did.
He was really good about it. I was afraid that he might start handing out like the URLs to people, but when you told me he wouldn't give it to you, that's when I knew he was being good about it.
So, and then, of course, gives me the beta code right as I'm going to Judges Week.
Yeah.
It's like the first day of Judges Week. He's like, hey, if you have time, check it out. I'm like, I will not have time this week.
Yeah.
So I've jumped in a little bit. We can actually get to more, not only to the concept of what Siftd is, but just kind of like the whole idea of just aggregating, all the good stuff out there, checking it out.
Yeah.
Kind of curious to get your take on Judges Week, because that's something that I kind of experienced through you, because you attended it on behalf of GameTrailers over the years.
Yeah.
So I went to my first Judges Week. I'm just curious.
Maybe I should ask you what you thought of it after.
It was
not going to it all those years.
It was interesting because I think some people, when they go to the show, they actually have a lot of time. They're kind of roving reporters. A lot of stuff they do is editorial. They're used to writing stuff really fast. Yeah. So maybe in 3 days they can fit everything in. But I'm probably actually going to the show one day this week, because I'm mostly going to be doing our live coverage here on this stage.
Right.
And so it was really nice to have to not only have the time a month in advance to check all this stuff out, but kind of get your head in that space as far as like look at each company and then be like, oh, okay, here's what you showed, here's what you didn't. Okay, I'm getting a picture of what you are going to have to offer at E3. And then it really makes those surprises when you do Judges Week and then you still haven't seen everything.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I would say is that in some ways Judges Week feels almost like a missed opportunity, because you go and you see these games and, they do their demo, it lasts 10 minutes or whatever, and then you're kind of, I wouldn't say stuck there, but then you're at that event for like another hour and a half doing nothing, basically. You're eating hors d'oeuvres and you're talking to other journalists. I would have always preferred to be able to do like an interview or get stuff in the bank for E3, so that when E3 comes, it isn't such a mad scramble. And there are a couple publishers that'll do that, that'll let you do an interview or cover their games a little bit. But for the most part, they're like, just come check it out, take your notes, and then get out of here and go to your next appointment.
Right.
And I always felt like, in some ways, it was a little bit of a waste of time, because you weren't actually being able to get any coverage out for your users. But like you said, it is a really good week for education. You know what's coming out there. You know the landscape. It helps you as an editor-in-chief or the head of a site kind of plot strategically where you want your people to go and what you want your people to do and whether you want them to spend your time. If you look at E3 as like a chess match, basically going to Judges Week gives you like the competitor's first 4 or 5 moves to help prepare. So it's handy. I think it could be more handy. But then you put pressure on the publishers to prepare more than they had planned on preparing. And it's kind of this self-repeating system that's hard to break out of at this point. It's helpful, and it's better than not having Judges Week at all. And as you said, if you're at EIC or you're a manager in any of these sites, you don't have a lot of time to go to E3 and just kind of saunter around and check everything out on your own. So it is kind of good, especially when you go to do that best of E3 stuff after E3 is over. If you're in your position or the position I used to be in, it helps a lot when you go to do the best of E3 stuff and helps those conversations wrap up a little more quickly. So
well, even just right out of the gate, if you're like going to be on GameSpot stage or IGN stage or something like on Tuesday morning at 11 a.m. and they're like, hey, what'd you think of Nintendo's offerings? And you're like, I just saw the Direct, but I don't, I haven't seen anything.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of BSing that goes on E3 week where you just run into people at bars or
right.
in between appointments or whatever, and going to Judges Week gives you something to actually talk about with these people outside of the, hey, how are you doing? How's things at your company and that type of stuff. So, and there's a lot of times where you get in those positions, you're like, what am I going to say to this person? I haven't seen him in like a year and a half. So it is handy for that as well. And it's also fun to bounce stuff off of other people. It's always interesting to go to Judges Week and see stuff yourself and maybe talk to a couple of the other judges about it. But then you kind of formulate an opinion on it, and then it's always interesting to get out with everybody else when they see it and see what their take is on it. So it's fun, it's exciting, it's grueling. It's kind of like E3 actually starts like before E3.
Oh, sure.
You get that little buffer zone of a few weeks in between, but at that point, if you're scheduling and everything, there really is no break. So it really just kind of adds an extra week of E3 prep onto what's already an arduous schedule.
It was interesting. You were talking about, like being stuck there and like having, time and just like, okay, I can't interview, I can't do anything.
Well, for some people, it's really bad because they fly them from wherever they live. Yeah. And like I would drive to some of this because sometimes you have like a 2-hour break. Yeah. And so I would drive. And like if that would happen, like I'd drive back to the MTV offices and check in with you guys or
I wish we were still in Santa Monica. It wasn't enough time to go all the way down to Beverly Hills and back.
Yeah, or I'd like bring like back when we used tapes for footage. I'd bring tapes back or whatever, and we get them like ingesting and start working with that stuff. But there are people who come from like Wisconsin or Minnesota or whatever, and they're just stuck there. And you could see it on their face. They're like, oh, man.
But it was interesting because there were some games that, it's the first time anyone's ever played this. And, it's really exciting. And we would have 20 minutes left of an appointment. And I'd be like, I'm okay.
Oh, yeah,
I got enough. And then other games, they had to pull me out of the chair. They were like, we got to shut these consoles down and pack up. And
well, I think the other thing you see, too, is that a lot of the EICs don't play games that much at those things. Like the game will be sitting there. And they'll just be like, I'm going to have another wiener wrapped hot dog, whatever. That's going to hit the hors d'oeuvre table. You're like, bro, like, there's this game we haven't seen before. It's right here. And they're like, pass. Like, it's a pretty interesting dynamic, like the whole thing. It's also a good way, too, if you don't get to go out very much. The last few years I was EIC at GT, like, I didn't go out hardly at all. And a lot of it was my boss saying, like, your butt needs to be at work. You can't go out and travel anymore. It's a good chance to like reconnect with a lot of the people in the industry, a lot of journalists that maybe you worked with prior. Like you said earlier, I worked at GameSpot and a bunch of other places. So it was always good for me to run into like my old colleagues and catch up with them and, talk about industry stuff and trends in the industry and how things are changing or shifting and get their perspective on it. So there's a lot of facets to Judges Week for E3 for sure.
But yeah, so that was interesting. Hadn't done that before. So moving on to touch on Siftd really quickly before we'll get into it later at a greater length. What are you excited about? Brad has his hands on his face. Ben just said, "Oh my God."
The better part is that Ben had his hand on Huber's back.
Look at these costumes. Look at Hugo right now. This is amazing.
That is pretty good. He's like a hockey goalie.
And these come packaged with Ultra. So Ultra meaning like all of the add-ons, all the new characters, all that stuff.
Yeah. Yep.
All the glitches.
If they want to sell that game again, it better have cool costumes. That's all I gotta say.
So I got a question for you for Siftd. So obviously the Siftd name factors into having the gaming journalism you want the way you want it. So,
it sifts everything, yeah.
So if
you look at our logo, it's like the logo is like it represents huge blocks of information coming down. And then that line is the site, and then it filters it all down into these separate categories for you to ingest it. So
and you have a subscription model, so you can come in and you have a basic and a premium model, so you can go in.
Yeah, the site's free for the first 2 weeks. There's 12 days left of the first free trial going on right now, and then at the end of that first 2 weeks, it'll be a 72-hour free trial.
So, of course, I went in, and I like that it's not just turning stuff on and off, but you can pick, I really like this stuff,
yeah,
I just kind of like this
stuff. There
are
sliders for each, and look, there's like 4 different categories that you can rate. There's platforms, so if you don't like Nintendo or Sony or whatever, you can basically turn all that stuff off, And then we have genres, we have topics, and we have content types. So you can tell us, I really like reviews. I hate trailers. Who hates trailers?
I was gonna say I like trailers. So that was I like that I could not only like them but double like them.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
yes.
I mean, there's a slider with 5 points of articulation. So you can say, I really don't want to see this. I kind of don't want to see it. In the middle, you're basically saying, I trust Siftd to tell me what's good. And then you can go, I like this. I really, really like this for each of the categories that you can rate.
So my question is, before we move on to talking about Street Fighter a little bit, what is your Siftd? What is the Shane Satterfield Siftd?
Well, actually, if you go on our YouTube channel, you can see my Siftd because I actually set this. I did a live demo of the site, and you can see how I kind of set everything. But it's just kind of skim over it. I leave all the platforms in the middle because I'm pretty platform agnostic. I'm open to pretty much anything. But as far as like the content types, like I'm partial to features. I like culture stuff a lot. Like our culture channel is kind of a mashup of like community stuff, like mods and things like that, fan-made like films, any crossover stuff between like games and other forms of entertainment or media. So I like that. I like the long form feature stuff. Reviews I'm always gonna like. Trailers I'm always gonna like. As far as stuff that I turn down interviews a good bit.
Right.
And like if you get over to like the topic category, like I turn down esports a good bit. I'm not a big esports guy, even though if I could do it, I would. I'm just not good enough. And then as far as the other stuff, it's like I generally keep it in the middle because the other thing I have to do too is like, we have an algorithm that takes all the information that you give us, and then we rate each piece of content as we bring it in and curate it into the site. And then we shove all that information into an algorithm, and it spits out each person's custom feed. And so I need to like monitor our algorithm. So I don't want my ratings to be too crazy because if I do, it'll really tweak what shows in my Siftd, and I want to have a good baseline to kind of see how it's working and to make sure it's working well for everybody. So I don't get to have as much fun with Siftd as everybody else, but I think that's kind of the way it is anytime you build something. It's like everybody gets to have fun with it. You're the one who toils over it and sort of wrings your hands over it. So
Well, I can officially tell you that it is working and working well.
Yeah.
Because I checked it out today, and GameTrailers content was available. I did see it in there, so it's like, there we go.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, this does seem kind of like this strange favor that you are doing for a lot of, bigger publications and smaller publications to maybe, bring some of this content to light that people haven't seen before. Was that something you went out and talked to other companies ahead of time?
No,
or
not at all.
How is that? Has that discussion opened up at all?
No, it
people
actually
at
hasn't really
GameSpot or
much at
IGN
all.
or
Like a
shit on
couple
there?
people have just sent me messages and said, I love it. I can't believe how well it works. When I first heard about it, I thought it was just like this stupid gimmick thing, but it really works well. Like if you really are serious about setting your preferences for all those categories, like you'll be shocked like at how well it delivered. Like the cool thing about it is there are so many sites, and not just sites anymore, it's all the people on YouTube and everything. They're creating all this awesome content. You cannot ever hope to find and consume it all. And when I built Siftd, basically what I built was a site that I wanted to use. Like when you get older, you start to value your time differently. It's like when I was a kid, it's like, oh, I'm going to go skate now, and then we're going to go over to Billy's and hang out and play Tecmo Bowl. Like when you're young, you don't think about time as money at all because you think it's finite, and you're like, I can do whatever I want. But as you get older, it's like, well, let's see. I can sit here and spend an hour and a half going from 30 different sites trying to find one piece of content that I like and sacrifice that time with my wife who has demands on my time and is like, hey, when I get home from work, I want to have dinner with you. I want to spend time with you. And so when you start getting those pressures in life, a lot of people have kids.
Yeah, I was just going to
You
say.
start to look at things a lot differently, and you start to say, well, how can I save some of that time? And that's what I wanted to create with Siftd. I wanted to create something for people who are maybe a little older, maybe a little more mature, so the conversation on the site is a little more maybe advanced, and something that could serve them well and bring it in at a cheap price so that they don't have to think twice about paying the subscription. And at $10 a year, like even if you're working at McDonald's, it's an hour of your work paying for a whole year where you can literally, with Siftd, you could save hundreds of hours a year in web surfing. And you're getting exposed to all these. That's the thing we've seen about the site is all the people who are on it are like, I never would have seen this piece of content. I never knew this site existed. I never knew this guy existed who I now love. And so it's a really good discovery tool. Not only is it saving you time, it's also helping you find stuff that you really love in a very short period of time. So, when I first started working on this with Brent, who built the original GameTrailers, and we were talking about it, he's like, I don't know if we can make this work, man. And so I started to doubt it a little bit too. I'm like, is this really going to work? And like now that it's here, I mean, even as somebody's worked on it for over a year, I am shocked at how well it works. Like, I'm really, really happy with the final product. So
And exciting to see people, like you were saying before, come in and experience it and reach out to you and work really hard just because they're excited about the concept. And
yeah, I mean, my biggest fear was a subscription model. And, when I first announced it, a lot of people on message boards were like, hard to compete with free. And they're totally right. But when you work with a subscription model, you're not necessarily going for like, I don't want 5 million people at Siftd a month. Like you can't wrangle it and the discussions get out of hand and you can't moderate all the people.
Right.
But if you're charging a subscription, you don't need that many. Like if you end up with even like 40,000 people who are subscribers, like you're doing very well and you're gonna be able to create content just as good as anybody else. And so you have to change your expectations, and not only just from the part of the people like me who are building it, but the people who use it too. Like a lot of people are like, well, I can get that free somewhere else. And it's like, but you can, but is it really worth it to you to have 15 tabs open in your browser? And you go to a lot of these sites and like, they don't organize their stuff. So tell me where else you can go.
Right.
For instance, the other day I was on the Destiny page of Siftd, and you can sort every game page by all our channels. And I looked at it and I was like, oh, Japan, because we have a channel for just Japan. And I was like, there's got to be nothing there. And I clicked on it, and sure enough, there was a podcast from 84 Play in Tokyo where they talked about Destiny in Japan and what the reception was like. And that's the kind of stuff that you get from Siftd that you just can't get anywhere else. And so what I really hope is that people just really give it a chance. That's why we've made it free for the first 2 weeks, because when people use it, even for a couple days, if they go back to their old routine, I guarantee they'll change their mind. They'll be like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I would just go here. These guys give me what I want from all the places I love, and it's only $10. So really happy with how it's turned out so far. And the feedback's been amazing. Like, the conversation on the site has been really refreshing, because it is a lot of older people and people who really love games that have a passion for it, but have been kind of squeezed out from communities, other places on the internet. And it's pretty crazy, man. I'm pretty excited about what's happened with the site. It's been pretty awesome.
yeah, that's why I wanted to catch you right at the beginning, where
Yeah.
still kind of all this stuff is like swimming around.
And I mean, look, in a month's time, everything could change.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, because right now it's like, there's a couple thousand people on the site every day. Once it starts building and gets bigger and bigger, like who knows what could happen. But right now we're in this like nirvana place where everybody on the site is freaking awesome. Everybody's down with the plan. Everybody's into making it better and offering suggestions, and not in like a negative, like condescending, angry way. It's like, I like this already and I want to make it better because I want to stay here and I want all these other people to stay here. And everyone's just kind of worked together as a community to help make it better and a great site. So
if I want condescending chatter, I can't find that at Siftd. Is that what you're saying? There's no slider for condescending. I can't just be like, please, yes.
What I'm saying
More
is that
angst, please.
as more people come in, the
Right.
chances of that type of conversation increases. So, we have an army of The funny part is we have an army of moderators, and they have like nothing to do because everybody on the site is like awesome. Like our moderators are emailing me being like, I got like 2 reports all day.
Right.
Because we have a self-reporting system where if another user is acting like a jackass, you can report them. And if you false report and try to troll them, like there's huge punishment for that. And it says that when you do it, it's like, are you sure? Because if you're false reporting, you're going to get your butt handed to you. And we've had like 2 reports in like 2 days. It's been that way. And that's, it would be awesome if it stays that way forever. Right. The chances of that happening are probably pretty slim. But it's been great so far. I'm really excited about it, and everyone who's in on it is excited about it. And I hopefully you get some time in the near future to really dig into it.
Nothing. No big events coming up. Nothing really on my calendar right now. I'm sure I have plenty of time.
Nothing to draw your attention away.
Speaking of things that can draw your attention away, so I know you were a Mortal Kombat guy. I remember you were talking about back in the day. You were.
Well, I mean,
Mortal
look,
Kombat
I've been
in the
playing
arcades a lot.
games since the 70s, so I've gone through phases. I mean, originally I was like a Street Fighter guy. Actually, originally I was a Yi Ar Kung Fu guy. Like that was the first fighting game that I really got into, and Punch Out in the arcade.
Yep.
And then it went to Mortal Kombat in the arcade, and then it went to Street Fighter in the arcade when I was like in college. And so, I've kind of gone through phases. I mean, honestly, probably my favorite fighting franchise right now is Virtua Fighter. And I mean, I don't know at this point if I'll ever see another one, because Sega is kind of crapping the bed right now, and like they're going the mobile route like a couple other publishers. And so I'm worried I may never see another new Virtua Fighter, which would really stink. But what I love about Virtua Fighter is that it's realistic. And it uses, I mean, it embellishes a little bit here and there, but it's the most realistic fighting game as far as like real physics and real body types and the effect of one body on another and how that all works and ties together. It's just really strategic. And I think what made me fall in love with that series was going to Japan and going to the arcades, because back 4 or 5 years ago, if you go to Japan, like, the arcades were all about Virtua Fighter. I mean, literally just wall-to-wall machines of people just going at it. And, I would go in there, and if I would win one match, I'd freak. I'd be like, woo! And put my fist up. And the Japanese player would just, like, poke his head around the side of the cabinet and look at me and laugh, and I'd be like, sorry, man. I just want to beat you guys for one freaking round, because they were so good. It was, I would just sit there and watch them play for hours and hours while they chain smoked cigarettes.
Oh yeah, just dead serious, the sunglasses on.
Oh yeah. But I love that about Japan. Like, the game culture there is just so incredible, and I actually haven't gone for a few years now, and I feel like when you go back there, it kind of just reinvigorates your passion for games, because it's embedded in the culture there. It's like, it's not just like a billboard here or like a TV commercial. That's like video games here, or like going to Dave & Buster's. It's like when you go to Japan, it's like there are just little arcades tucked away, and there's just one Virtua Fighter machine in there, but the guy that's playing it is like the best guy in fucking Shinjuku or whatever. So it's like, it's just a whole other level of acceptance of what we really love. And I feel like it's good to go back there every once in a while to just get that refilled, so to speak.
I think Ben Moore's waiting to have his Japan well
Can
filled.
I swear on
at
this
any
show, by the
point.
way?
No, no, we're gonna get snow. Of course, you can swear. So really quick, we're gonna move on to the next segment. But I just want to point out that we're actually we're making history here on GT Live tonight. We're gonna be finishing a GT Time bet live later on in this episode. I missed last week's episode of GT Time, but apparently there is a timing event that is going to take place within Street Fighter, and we're going to play that out right before we do our Q&A at the end of the show.
What's
and
the
figure
bet?
out who is the winner. We'll get into more details. They're going to set up something, and the question is how long it's going to take.
Oh, okay.
How long that match will actually be. But I don't know the details. Mr. Kyle Bossman is going to come up later. But right now, I'm sorry, Mr. Huber, you got to put down the controller down. Were you just about to load a fight? We can keep talking. Oh, perfect. Oh, you're good? Okay, it's a good time to stop?
Timing, yeah.
I don't want to bother you, Huber. Do you have time to come up and
I do.
join me here?
He just dropped the mic.
So we have a segment that Michael Huber is now pretty much owned, called Number 11, where we talk about the sad entry that did not make the countdown for that week.
It's like Mr. Irrelevant from the NFL draft, like
Right.
the last guy drafted or whatever.
Always seems to be Michael Huber who's up here talking about something. This week,
Own it.
Because of a couple of great suggestions on Twitter, this week we're doing the top 10 live action trailers, which you were around when we did the top 100 trailers of all time. You know
That
that
never, ever was released.
right? Well, top 100 games didn't come out, but 100 trailers we did. And that took a while to actually go through like all of those trailers and watch
So
them.
the top
like, again
100
and again.
games we must have burned like 300 hours on for nothing.
I know. He still
It happens.
talks
He's still
about
a
that
little salty.
story.
Think
Yeah.
about it,
I
though.
cut
You
a
spend that
Dynamo
much
promo for
time
that.
on something, and like the other problem too is we like advertise it and marketed it to like all our fans, and like they're all excited about it, and then corporate just like yanked the plug
last
out of nowhere. Like some
We gotta bring it
SVP's
back.
just like, you're not doing that. I'm like, what? What do you mean we're not doing that? Like,
We can talk about that now because we're not with Viacom
yeah, we
anymore.
can't talk about it.
Thanks, Viacom. But this week, we're doing the top 10 live action trailers. Which is
Instead, we did a motion channel.
right. Quit bringing it down, Shane. So top 10 live action trailers was interesting because actually I brought that up with Elise Willems, and she's like, "Is there one good live action trailer?" Because it's not something that you really recall for having quality. It was really interesting to look and really try to like figure out like, why would you do that? Like, why would you make a live action trailer? What do you get out of it? Especially if your acting is terrible. Like,
I think
what's the
fans love it
bonus?
though, because they get to see this like fake virtual world that they've obsessed over in the real world. Like, this is what it would be like if Master Chief were real. And like, seriously, I think a lot of people care about stuff like
Or
that.
at least curious to see if you pull it off or not,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
a lot of times they don't.
There's
And
morbid curiosity around a lot of it. I
And
think.
one, speaking of our top 100 trailers of all time, one entry that wound up on our top 100 trailers of all time, but did not make our top 10 because it does not hold up over time.
It does not.
But Mr. Huber would still like to defend it. The Purity First infomercial for Deus Ex Human Revolution,
I have not watched that since we
Right?
did the meetings for that.
which I will talk about the strengths of this trailer. So one thing that's really nice is it really goes into like tons of different details. There's tons of different actors. There's lots of different ways that it shows stuff. Sometimes you're watching like a news feed, you're watching an interview of somebody on television. Sometimes you're like directly like talking to somebody on the street that's homeless that, you know, because I can't afford the medicine to support my bionic legs.
Yeah,
and so,
yeah.
you know, and then sometimes it's like, you know, you're watching, you know, like somebody on their phone just taping some like riot or something that's happening on the street. So I like that. But I mean, if you're having a live action trailer, it's really all about. I mean, it's about your writing, but I think it's more acting than writing, because I think if you even have,
I think
bad
it's more
acting,
about costuming than anything.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a-
costuming over the acting. You would take a bad actor in a good costume over.
I think
a good
for
actor in a bad
fans, I think the
costume.
costuming is more important. I mean, think about it. If you have someone try, well, first of all, Master Chief, you don't have to really act at all.
Right. It's all yeah.
Stand
it's all
there.
You
video,
just dub
yeah.
the voice
Yeah.
over top of and
Right.
just emote. That's all you have to do. But if like his helmet wasn't right, or like any of his gear wasn't right, or his guns weren't right, I think people would care about that more than the fact that he delivered that line flat.
Well, for me, I mean, this trailer fell apart just because of the acting. I mean,
Yeah.
there was like
Yeah, he's
one.
very bad.
There's one guy that's so good in it. There's this British guy who it sounds like he's actually some
Professional.
bio expert, you know, that's explaining like, you know, why you do augmentations and kind of the current state of like why augmentations are the way they are. But everybody else is just.
See, the irony of that is when you
terrible.
have somebody who's really good, it shows how bad everybody else
Yeah.
is.
Right.
Well, Shane nailed it earlier when he said that you want to see this video game world in real life.
Yeah.
And for me, that franchise has always permeated real life more than a lot of other game franchises.
Yeah.
It feels realistic. It is grounded in fictitious reality. Like this
You can
could
see it happening,
conceivably
yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
And the trailer does a good job of or it did a good job when it came out. It
Right.
made me just go crazy with the possibilities of like, wow, this world is on the brink of anarchy.
Yeah.
All these rich people have fallen out. They become addicted to augmentations. So that
Well, that's kind of Los Angeles right there, isn't it?
Eventually, escape from LA with Kurt Russell. But I mean, this is something.
Plenty of augmentations walking down Hollywood Boulevard.
Presumably, yeah. Yeah, we're on Wilshire. You run up to Melrose right there, and there's augmentations all over the place. But I mean, this is something, I mean, hopefully we will be dealing with this as a society, because it does
Yeah.
sound cool that, you know, people that are wheelchair bound can walk.
Well, just
you
think
know?
about VR. You know, when
Yeah.
I was a kid, not even a kid, when I was a teenager, if you'd have talked to me about VR, I'd have been like, yeah, right.
yeah.
No, you're going to see that in your lifetime, and in your fairly young lifetime, I'd have been like, no way.
I remember
But
in
here we
Strange
are.
Days, the guy has no legs, so he wears like the VR helmet
Yeah, yeah.
to have the feeling of running on the beach.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a reality. It's coming up.
But I mean, a lot of things that not even that long ago we thought were going to be impossible and we'd never see, we're seeing them now. So, I mean, who knows what we're going to see when we're like 80.
So
We're going to be the old people being like, I don't get it.
So I think that's why this trailer made such an impact, and why we ranked it where we did,
Yeah.
because and I think they're doing a lot more trailers like this now, you know, kind of like I think we saw that for Watch Dogs. It would seem like a good franchise. you
It was
know,
well
to sell
shot,
it
too,
like
that
this.
trailer.
Yeah. And there was just variety. Like I said, it's
Yeah.
not just one person you're talking to. It's constantly moving around.
Yeah.
It just, man, acting. You just got to do it.
It's aged a little bit, but I still think it
Capture something.
it transcends the boundary of a video game, and the way that it is like a documentary, just, you know, it's different. It's not like some random, you know, like Master Chief, where it's so far-fetched, oh, let's just have, you know, some guys in some costumes, big special effects. It's like,
Yeah.
this is trying to say something.
Yeah.
So
It's also
Well, it's
about,
like
yeah.
Elise says, she's like, I can't think of a good live action trailer, but one thing I will tell you is that I watch every single live action trailer. Every one. If I ever see blah, 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 live action trailer, I watch it.
Because I think it's kind of like a car wreck. You know, you're like wondering,
It
like,
could be a car wreck,
I
but
wonder
I
if
just,
it.
I still have that fan inside of me where I want to see how they've represented this fake world in reality. And the curiosity always gets the best of me, and click. There I go.
So top 10 live action trailers, you'll be clear. That will show up in your Siftd
I will
feed.
totally watch it. And you know what? We will rate that piece of content high to make sure it pops up at the top of everybody's
Because
Sift.
I saw top 10s was one of the sliders.
Lists
that,
is
top
one of
10
them, yeah.
lists. Yeah, is that
Yeah.
something that you still enjoy? You know, I know you were working with you're working with Spike and their website, and you were doing countdowns there for a while.
Oh, yeah.
Is that
Dude, we
still-
lived on it. Spike could have
Right.
become BuzzFeed if they had stuck with it, man. I mean, that site was pulling in crazy numbers from that stuff. It's not even looking at Sift. It isn't like what I like. Like, when I build it, it's for, like, what does everybody else like and what does everyone else care about? And there's a lot of people that like top 10 whatever, top 15 whatever. It's a good, easy way to get a lot of information in one click for a lot of people. And we just want to make sure we cater to everybody. There's a lot of people that do like lists. There's a reason you guys do GT Countdown still, because people like them. And
They're so fun when they relate to topics at hand. You know,
Yeah.
Witcher comes out, you do top 10 fantasy games, or something.
Yeah. Well, it's also like this law of diminishing returns, because every time you do a top 10, it becomes more difficult to do the next one.
Yeah.
Because you can't do that one again. And when I used to work at GT, like, it was hard back then to find new top 10s, and we thought we'd come up with a good idea. We Google it, and like 5 people had done it already.
Yeah.
And here you are years later, and I can't even imagine how difficult it is to come up with new ones. So top 10 best live action trailers, not such a bad idea.
It is tempted to do like the top 10
Top 10
whatever
list?
games, like 2015 edition.
Yeah.
Just be like, well, we have done that before, but like it was a completely different staff. It was like I'm the only
exactly.
person in this room that was
on the same
there
staff,
when
yeah.
we picked that.
Well,
that
Bloodworth
content,
is still
so.
here, but yeah.
Right. But thankfully, Huber brings a lot of passion to it. So,
He does.
you'll
What
get
I
an
love
exciting
about you,
countdown
Huber,
list.
is your passion for games, man.
Thank you.
It is infectious, and it comes through in all the stuff that you do. So.
Good, I'm glad.
I watch all your stuff. Like, I watch
Nice.
every episode of every show you guys do, because I have to. And I enjoy it. It's crazy how you've really transformed GT from what it was into this new beast, and it's exciting to see. So
Well, it's exciting to have you a part of it, Shane.
Yeah.
That said, let's take a break. We are going to watch a trailer now. We're going to watch a badass trailer. As far as badass concerned, Mad Max is pretty badass. If you guys haven't seen Fury Road, I invite you to check it out. Last week at Judges Week, I checked out the Mad Max game, which is great.
Is it great?
It's not like fantastic, but I've been waiting for this game for so long, and I thought they really got it, and they really got what makes the world of Mad Max fun. Got a new trailer for it called Savage Road this week. It's our badass trailer. Check it out.
Life is a savage road. Out here, a man with no wheels is a man with no hope.
I know you. You're the driver.
Where is the car?
Your black on black is scrap. It's gone. She'll never be whole again.
It's a long, dark passage from which there is no exit.
There's something brewing out there. This land is about to be scorched by Gastown wrath.
In these wastelands, the righteous path is whichever road gets you out alive.
It's time to let the people know, and the blood flow!
I see what's behind the crazy in your eyes.
Lord Scrotus is gonna hurt you more than you could ever hurt me.
You're wrong.
So yeah, I got a little bit of a tease of the story in Mad Max. I think there's enough badass in there. Speaking of badass,
Here I am. Hey, what's
Kyle
happening?
Bossman.
Badass incarnate.
Sorry I took the show back from you, Kyle. You did such a good job last week. It was really
Do you mean that?
happy.
Do you
Yeah,
mean
I
that?
liked it.
Okay.
It was really cool. I was
I
at.
watched it. I thought you did
I was
well.
actually like at an event waiting for us to be like corralled in to play some super hot game, and I was like, oh wait, do you do that? So
Yeah,
sitting
yeah,
there, and Had a beer.
What I like, Brandon, I love
the
seeing
show?
you in chat. I like whenever you show up in chat. That's always such
fun.
a good feeling. Yeah.
You know what? I really enjoy being editor-in-chief at GameTrailers.com. I like working with you guys. But like not doing it and just watching it is also great.
Yeah, I get that. I get that.
It's like when I got back, Amanda was like, "Hey, so you like didn't show up really at the office this week?" And I'm like, "No." And she's like, "And everything's still operated." I'm like, "Yeah, but
That's hard. Yeah.
Kind of everything.
Need you.
Yeah, we do need you. Absolutely.
So we'll get to your bit in a second here, Kyle. But I like that you brought this up. So
Scoreboard.
So apparently Brad is currently topping the charts here. Huber is in last place, but that wasn't fair because you got up in the
lost a couple
with the chair.
rounds.
Yeah, it doesn't count, right? No, that's not fair because you had to come up and there'd be like
stacked.
at least one more dash here
The bets are stacked.
next to Huber's name, right?
Not one
no?
more.
No, Ben, no.
Not one more.
So
Ben does not like Huber's play style. We should
It's not a
cover
play
that.
style. It's not a play style.
Who does Huber play with?
He plays.
Hugo.
He plays with the square button. That's the only button he pushes.
The masher.
We might as well give him an Atari 2600 controller because he
know
only needs
what?
one button.
Any way you win in Street Fighter is a win.
No, it's not.
Anyway.
No, it's not.
Ben, you need to learn how to counteract it. It's like,
We did. That's why he won't have another
Adapt.
dash.
You
No
gotta
more
adapt.
dashes.
it's like Eddie Goro and Tekken. Like people who play with Eddie, it's like, oh, you're a cheeser, but it's like learn how to beat Eddie.
So Kyle, you're addicted to bets.
Love bets.
We do bets on GT Time.
Yes.
We have a bet that's now your bets are now bleeding into this other show.
How have we done this?
What do you mean how we've done this?
The bets are bleeding into every single show that I'm on.
Right, but
Yeah.
we've yet to do bets on GT Live before, but this
Let's
is
do
a
it.
live bet. So explain why we can do this live.
Okay, so here's what the bet was. Here's what we were all betting on. We're going to do a match in the hardest difficulty of arcade mode on Ultra Street Fighter 4. 1 round wins. We bet on how long that match would last. We're picking a random character.
Okay.
So wait, you against
I'm
the
sorry.
computer.
You gotta go back. We need
I
to
did
see.
random.
I know, but we need to see it. You can't just start a match and say we did random.
Apparently, he was pretty happy with the character that he randomly.
Yeah, he was. Here's the stakes. Brandon, for you, Elise bet 45 seconds. You
Okay.
want this match to last 45
I
seconds.
definitely do.
I want it to last 27. Blood is rooting for 14 seconds,
And
which
he's
is
probably gonna
insane. Andrea wants 60 seconds in the
Okay.
super seat.
All right.
Okay, so they're picking random. It's on hardest difficulty.
Hardest.
Okay.
And do we have to create our own clock, or will we see a clock on the actual screen?
We'll see a clock on the screen. It'd be cool if we could create our own clock. You want to do a timer?
Why?
No, we'll just
If they
subtract
time
from
it
99.
for us, then we're fine.
Yeah.
And everyone
okay.
will see it.
All right, here we
Unless
go.
it's in the bottom right hand corner of the
Hakan.
screen.
Oh, this is clutch. This is good. He's beefy. He's got a large HP. This is gonna be good.
And who's playing this?
It's random.
No, who's the one playing against the
No one.
computer?
Oh,
No one.
Poison.
No.
It's
Oh,
wait,
yeah,
the computer
it's
against
totally
computer?
I.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So it's gonna be how long it takes for a poison to beat us up. Here we go. Oh, okay. So set the controller down. It's all down. Okay, here we go. Come on, Hakan. Hang in there, buddy. Oh, no. Come on, buddy. Come on, buddy. Hang in there. This might be 14 seconds. Oh, my God. Poison, leave him alone.
9 seconds.
Oh, Poison, leave him alone.
Blood always wins. It's just gonna be like exactly 14. No, Blood's always gonna win.
Oh, Poison, stop it. Stop it. That's
19.
match.
18 seconds.
18 seconds. That means Bloodworth wins the bet.
18 seconds. Bloodworth
wow.
wins again. Bloodworth just completely sweeping every bet.
Yo, look at Poison
Doing
go.
the show.
That's what I'm saying. I was like, whoa.
Yeah, 45 at least. I don't know about that one.
Whoa, okay. Yeesh.
It's easy for me to say because I wasn't there. So, boy, wasn't that exciting.
That was exciting. Brandon, I freaking loved that. Chat was loving it too.
That was pretty cool. Yeah, Blood with the win.
Yeah.
I wasn't excited because I knew Blood was going to win. That's what I wasn't excited.
Okay, I get that.
So before we get into your wonderful questions and throw all of them violently at Mr. Satterfield over here, I want to talk a little bit more about just the concept of aggregating content, because it's actually something that something that you want to do with your website, and something that I've been really surprised. It seems like Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and like all that, like they're almost kind of known for that, about like.
Yeah.
Just having this like big barf of stuff, and there's really no way to like discern like what you want. It was only until recently that Twitter on the official site, and it's like trickling out to their mobile apps, now adds a description to the hashtags that are trending.
Right.
So before you would just see a trending hashtag, it's like, I don't know what that means. I don't know that guy. Like I'd always freak out whenever I'd see a name, because it'd be like, oh no, did someone pass away? And it's like, oh no, this guy got drafted to some football team. Like, okay, well, I missed that.
Right.
So now you get a little description, and it's like, It's crazy that Twitter's around for so long and it took them that long to do that. YouTube especially is just,
it's a mess.
Yeah, it is a mess. I mean, and it amazes me like that I can't do some of the functionality available on Siftd on YouTube.
But
that
see,
I can't tell
everything
them
is
like
that way.
literally if it doesn't say game or trailer in it, I don't want to watch it. Go.
Because you start talking about Facebook, and what you don't realize is a lot of what your feed is supplied with is driven by advertising campaigns. They look at your data. First of all, we don't look at anyone's data. You guys can do whatever the hell you want on Siftd. We don't look at any of that because we don't have to, because we don't sell your data. We don't have to sell your data. But that's what Facebook does. It looks at what you like and what you interact with, and it starts shoving ads in your direction based upon what you like or posts that are related to those same things. And so no social media platform gives you the choice to say, I don't want that. I want this. I don't want this other stuff. And they're also so big, it's like, how could you even wrangle it at this point? And so I think we have an advantage because we started at the beginning with this concept. And so we built the whole site from the ground up just to do it. And not just the site that everybody's seeing, but the CMS and the admin is really, that's the secret sauce of Siftd. Like, we built the admin to do this. And so we aren't like sitting there with 20 tabs open in our browser and like jumping from the site to site and refreshing. Like, we've built our admin to go out and grab all that stuff and bring it in. And then once all that information comes in, we build an interface that lets us manage that content and get it out to the right channels and to rate it properly. So I don't know that you could go back if you're Twitter or if you're Facebook and retrofit your website with something like this at this point, because it's too late. You haven't been addressing all the content as it comes in, and they're so big, like, you could never do it anyway. It's unique to Siftd, and unless somebody else decides to start from scratch and try to build a competitor to it, it's unique in the space, which is not easy to say on the internet in this day and age.
Right.
One of the comments I've seen about it when I first announced it was like, surely somebody else has done this already, or sure, and a lot of people are like, I'll just use my RSS reader. Well, your RSS reader still brings in all this other garbage that you don't care about. I know, because I look at them all day. And so you really have to build something from scratch with this very specific idea in mind to really make it work.
So do you think advertising is the reason why YouTube hasn't, had an interest in something like that? They're like, well, we're not going to give people the choices to, kind of like, sift out all of the stuff that they want, versus the stuff that they don't.
I just don't
because
think that they can do it.
We want you to watch the stuff that we want, especially Facebook.
Well, I mean, they do kind of give you the opportunity to do that with subscriptions. You can subscribe to channels. And instead of just going to YouTube and seeing that whole mashup of stuff, you can just go and look at your subscriptions. But even when you do that, like, you go and look at that subscription page, and probably 2/3 of the stuff on that page, even if they're from your favorite creators, you probably still don't want to watch it. And so there's no ideal solution for YouTube, in all honesty, but it doesn't seem to be hurting them at all. But that's the thing. I mean, that was the other reason why we went the subscription model, is because it's so hard to survive on ads now. I mean, back when I worked at GT, I don't know what it's like for you guys now, but when I worked at GT, we were losing 40% of our ad revenue off the top to ad blocker. And so, I worked at GT and saw that. So, I'm leaving to go build my own site. It would be idiotic for me to build a site that's based on an ad model. And it would also be idiotic for me to try to create another GT or another IGN or another GameSpot. Like, you guys are so far out ahead as far as SEO and search engines and just your bulk of content. It would be idiotic to do something like that. So I knew I had to create something different, and I knew I had to create something with value. And I needed to do something disruptive. And that was sort of the goal of building Siftd. And hopefully everyone that uses it will agree that that's what we've done. But that was sort of the goal from the beginning.
So one final question. So you are creating your own content. So you're doing reviews you call Game Evals, and you have the weekly podcast with Mr. Marcus Spear called Game Face. It's on Thursday nights.
Yep, Marcus and I have a new show, and probably people watching remember us when we were on Invisible Walls with a lot of other people in this room. But yeah, we have a new show that we actually stream at the same time as you guys the following day.
Right, so and we premiered the same week.
Yeah, that's right, we did.
And we both had Ryan Stevens as our guest.
That's right, yeah. Well, we love Ryan. I mean, you can never get enough Ryan in your life.
This is true.
And so our show is tomorrow at 6 p.m., just like this show. So yeah, and our show's been going great. We're on our 11th episode. We'll be filming our 12th tomorrow, streaming our 12th tomorrow, and then we archive it on the site. But yeah, we do Game Evals, and our original content mantra is that if we can't do something differently, we're not going to do it. Because the other thing I looked at when I started building a new site was like, okay, this game came out. There's 28 reviews for that game. Do they need number 29?
Right.
Who cares at that point? It's like, so you have to find a new way to approach it. So I started thinking about it, and I'm like, okay, well, one of the things that's always been a part of scoring systems is this kind of magic sauce that goes on. Like when I worked at GameSpot, we actually had like a thing that we would adjust in our reviews called tilt. And I still really don't understand what the tilt was. Like Greg Kasavin kind of took care of that. Like we'd hand in our reviews and he'd like adjust the tilt. But there's always kind of this secret sauce in reviews where you're like, well, maybe I'm taking it into consideration whether a fan will like this, or this is a Star Wars game, and so Star Wars fans will like it, so I'm going to adjust the score based upon that. Well, what we're doing with our game evals is just cracking it right down the middle. And they're scored in 8 different categories. And if a game doesn't have online, it gets a 0 in that category, which may sound like, oh my God, like but when you have 8 categories, it doesn't bring down the average that much. It still like keeps it right around where it should be. And then kind of like how you can set your Sift ratings on Siftd, you can also go and tell us how much you care about each one of those categories in your game evals. So say you don't care about story at all, and a game doesn't have a story, and we give it a 0. Well, you can tell us, I don't care about that at all, and that 0 will not affect the score. So every user who comes to Siftd gets a custom game eval score based upon how important each of those 8 categories are to them. And honestly, I mean, how else can you really create evaluations that are going to work for everybody? Because you really can't. And so I'm trying to get as close to that as possible with our game evals. And again, doing something different so people have a reason to subscribe to the site. Because if we're just doing reviews like everybody else, you have no unique selling proposition.
I'm curious, so if you're creating your own content and the content is being funneled through a website that is busy grabbing content from all sorts of other places, how do you kind of like make your content... How do you make it obvious to the viewer, hey, this stuff you're looking at over here is stuff that we got from other sites. This stuff is our stuff.
Oh, we tag it. You can see, every piece of content on Siftd, they'll have like the publication at the very bottom of the module so you can see where it comes from. And so we'll have like our little Siftd logo there so you know, but also we have like tags that go on the content. So say it's a game eval, which is only for our premium users. There'll be a little gold star in the top right that'll designate to people that is just for our premium users. And then in our big promotion at the top of the page, we have the logo much bigger so they know as well. And we have a separate landing page for all our original content.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
So we obviously, you know, the other thing too is that we have basic subscribers, and we don't want to be jerks and like constantly be like flaunting like, oh, you can't get this because it's only premium. You need to upgrade to premium. There's a very fine line that you walk when you do that stuff. You know, you don't want people to feel unwelcomed, and you don't want people to feel like they're coming there and you're bribing them to become a premium member. It's just very interesting when you work on a subscription site, how you look at everything differently and how you think about like the emotions of the user and how's the basic guy going to feel if we do this, and how are the premium people going to feel because they've paid more money and we don't want to give too much away to the basic subscriber. And so it's been crazy working on this and looking at everything completely differently than I've looked at it for like the last 15 years, really, where I worked in traditional games journalism. And like I said, we want to do it differently or we don't want to do it at all. And it's a challenge, like, because there's so many people creating content. Like sometimes I come up with an idea and I'm like, nobody's doing that. And then I'll get a link to YouTube where some kid in his basement's doing it or whatever. It's very hard to be original in this day and age. And that's what we're trying to do. And we've kind of tasked ourselves with this impossible task, but we're doing the best we can to try to reach the goal. So
there are kids in basements producing better content than Kyle Bossman here, but we still keep them around, you know, just in case.
There are kids in basements like orchestrating great music. You know, kids in basements are doing amazing things right now.
Oh, you're not kidding.
Yeah,
for real. I mean,
nothing wrong with basements.
Yeah, absolutely nothing wrong with kids in basements.
Basements are cool.
Do what you do, kids in basements.
I heard a couple of sighs, a couple of exclamations happening over there. Huber, have you reclaimed your throne? Should I write a couple more notches on here, Huber?
I'm losing, but I'm having a blast.
Okay.
That's the best kind of losing.
Yeah, it's
Brad,
a pleasure.
Would you say you're still in the lead, Mr. Ellis?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Ben, would you corroborate that statement?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm one win behind.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
It's getting heated over
We're here first, ladies and gentlemen. So to wrap up the show, we're going to ask you some questions.
Okay.
And Kyle's going to pick the 5 best questions that he likes, and those people are going to get a code for Not a Hero, which is fun. Have you checked that game out?
I have, yeah.
Looks pretty fun. I haven't played it yet, but it looks like my type of
side-scrolling
frantic
cover shooter
platformer.
I mean, that's something unique.
Yeah, there's something. I got to admit, there's something I really like about a side-scrolling game where you can like duck back into the environment and pop back out, you know, for like a shooter.
But again, like most
that vibe.
indie games, it is a side-scrolling game with a gimmick.
Right. Yeah.
That describes about 75% of all indie games right now.
It's from the Ollie. Hubert, you reviewed it, right?
It's like Swigga
What'd you end up giving this game?
7.8.
7.8.
Good score.
Personally,
The Wind Waker score.
like if I was not being objective and didn't have to like review it critically,
Yeah.
my personal scale I would have given it a little higher, but it became really repetitive.
The tilt, there it is.
Yeah, it became repetitive like pretty early on, so I had to.
That's how I felt about it. I
Yeah.
liked playing it in short bursts, but I actually sat down and tried to like plow through a good part of the game, and it started to turn me off a little bit. But in short bursts, I loved it.
Yeah.
Did Ben just rage quit?
I think so.
He did just kind of thumb off the
I used the bathroom.
Okay, rage quit denied. Bathroom confirmed.
So Shane, my first question is actually about Siftd, a very specific one.
Okay.
But I'm hoping you can explain the system to everybody.
Okay.
So this is from Burko. How does the leveling work? I've been using the site for a couple of days now. Haven't quite hit level 2, but I don't know how I've gained the XP that I have right now to push me towards level 2.
Yep. So everything you do on the site gives you points towards leveling up. And when you first start, it's very easy. Like, I'm surprised he hasn't got to level 2 yet, because you don't have to do that much to get there. But just like an RPG, as time goes on, the points you need to get to that next level start stretching out farther. And then the cool thing about Siftd is, once you reach a new level, we have player profiles that have these ambiguous icons. Like, one's a brain, one's like a mouse, and we don't label them specifically, and it drives people crazy. They're like, that is the biggest complaint we've got about the site, is we need labels on these things. But so basically, once you level up, you can take that point and you can kind of create a little profile. You can choose one of those icons to put a point at. And you basically build this player profile as you use Siftd. So when people go to your profile page, they can look at it and say, oh, this guy looks like he's into strategy games, the brain or whatever, or puzzle games.
Yeah.
And like, there's a football. Some of them are a little more obvious. Like, there's a football. There's one with a gun for people who like shooters. But we don't want to label.
Good, I picked the right one. There was one with 2 guns crossing each other. I was like, click.
And then the big dream for this is, because everyone's doing this and we're collecting their stats, if Siftd would ever get to a place where it would be huge and it's rolling in revenue, we would actually create in our app that's being built right now a little mobile game that people could actually use their stats on Siftd inside the mobile game in our app. So that's the big dream. But for now, it's just a way for people to go and look at your profile and be like, oh, he likes sports, he likes shooters, or whatever you're into. It's just a way to kind of personalize your page and also, feel good about using the site and level up. It's just all gamified pretty much.
So if you want to level up, the advice you give is just to watch more things.
Yeah,
Click on more things.
And comment, and our likes are 1-ups. They're like little mushrooms. So you get points for liking things, replying to comments, things like that. Pretty much anything you do on the site, you get points for.
Awesome. Here's actually another Siftd question. I like this one. This one's from HeadMonkey84. Mr. Satterfield.
What up, Head Monkey?
Is starting up Siftd the hardest thing you've done? If not, what was?
Wow, that's a great question. Well, it's kind of too early to answer that because it's only been out like a couple days. I think a lot of that would hinge on how successful it becomes, or if it doesn't, if it tanks. Like, I would say it's the hardest thing I've ever done because you work all that time and spend all that money on something, and if you were to just flush it down the toilet, it would easily be the hardest thing I've ever done. But that aside, I would just say skateboarding in general.
Whoa.
Skateboarding is one of the hardest things you can ever learn to do or try to do. Like, growing up, I played a lot of sports like football and basketball and baseball and all that, but at like 13 or 14, I started skateboarding.
Yeah.
And it is just brutally difficult. And the crazy thing about skateboarding is that when you fail, you get hurt and it's painful. It's not like, oh, dang, I got that wrong. It's like, oh, my knee's all cut up now, or I broke my arm. And so you have this psychology going on in your mind. You have to overcome your fear to learn how to do the tricks, but you also know you're going to get hurt. And so I think just learning how to skateboard in general, maybe just learning how to ollie, was maybe the hardest thing I ever did in my life.
Sure.
But I would say that's probably it.
Siftd is easy compared to ollies.
Yeah, there's our tagline.
Making your own website.
We're going to ditch what you want, and we're going to replace it with
easy compared to ollies. Here we go. Here's a current events. What's your opinion on the controversies surrounding games being graphically downgraded in comparison with their trailers?
Man, that's another tough topic. Like, honestly, it sucks. I mean, I'll say that right off the top. Like, it really sucks that this happens. But if you look at it from the perspective of the developer, it's like, every time you show your game, you want to put its best foot forward. And, you know, if I were the developers, I have to say I'd probably do the same thing that they're doing. Like, whenever I'd first show the game, I want it to look as good as possible. And, you know, it still was running on a PC when they showed it for the first times, but there's no good answer to it because it depends on what the developer did. If the developer legitimately showed the game that was running on their dev kit or on a PC, and ultimately there are certain parts of the game that they couldn't use that much detail in, and they had to cut it back for the betterment of the entire game, you can't really blame them for that. If it's bullshots and they're intentionally doctoring footage or showing something they have no intention of ever delivering, that's where it kind of crosses the line for me.
Right. And it's hard to tell. It's super hard to tell who's doing which one.
It is. It's impossible. And see, here's the thing. It's like, so that Witcher footage, it's like, yeah, it shows him like strolling along like a path, and it probably ran fine when they were doing that, but probably there was other parts of the game where you could really see like a whole vista and see like a mountain in the background and like 500 trees at once, and like the engine was just like, F off. Like, I can't do this. And that's when they have to start pulling back on their assets, taking some detail out of the levels. And in that case, it's kind of hard to fault them for doing that. But you're right. Like, it's really impossible to know whether one is done or another unless somebody leaks it out or a disgruntled ex-employee comes out and says, oh, yeah, we knew all along we're never going to hit that.
Right.
But there's really no easy answer. There's no cut and dried answer to that question, but a good one nonetheless.
Brandon, where do you stand on that?
I don't think I would ever discern from a trailer the actual visual quality of any game ever.
Yeah, okay, that's a fair stance.
You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
It's always an ideal. You know, it's always something. And I think trailers should be ideals. That's like the point. You know, like the people get into a room and they think, how can we sell this game? How can we make this game look, you know, as good as it can possibly be? And there is a part of me that kind of appreciates that. If it's a well-made trailer, if it's a good sell, then it's like, okay, I can see the excitement around your product. I can see what you want this to be.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned, there's so many reasons why it could have possibly not happened. You know, like
here's the last thing I would say.
An open world, you hadn't built everything yet, and so you're actually running it, or you add some new element or some new mode or something, and it screws everything up.
Yeah, the last thing I would say is just don't pre-order games. There is really no reason to pre-order games anymore. Do you really need a poster? Like, print out something from the interwebs. Like, because it's really the pre-order culture that is driving this, because they need to show the games. And look, this game had 1 million freaking pre-orders. It worked. And so as long as we keep plunking down that $5 to get that poster or whatever piece of crap it is that they give you with your pre-order, they're going to keep doing this stuff because that's what drives it. And honestly, you know, if you stop pre-ordering games, it will break the whole system, because the system is shelf space. So they're like, okay, well, GameStop is not going to give us a whole shelf if we don't hit 250,000 pre-orders. That's what drives this whole thing. And if you pre-order a ton, then all of a sudden they get that whole shelf, or they get the shelf all right behind the registers there where all the games are. And like all that stuff is done like strategically, and it's sold in a lot of ways, like how things are put in the store and where they're put, and if they're at eye level, if they're down at your knees where you hardly ever see anything. Go to a grocery store sometime. And they do the same thing at grocery stores. Like, the products that they want you to buy are right at eye level, and then it just filters on down, like, until at the bottom you have the people who don't want to play ball with the grocery stores and aren't giving the grocery stores like a cut on how much they're charging them for their products. Like, you don't realize all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes, not even just with games, but just retail in general. Like, there's just a lot of slimy crap.
Right, and like, but for that reason, I would never look at a game being sold in a trailer that has ESRB on the front, pre-order now in the back, and then think like, that's the game, you know?
You don't go to McDonald's asking for the cheeseburger you saw in the commercial.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, and that took a while. That took a while for me to learn. Okay. But at the same time, I mean, like, take Witcher for example. The first time, I think it was the boat. The first time you saw him on the boat, you know, and he's like going over the waves, are crazy, and the island he's heading towards is way off in the distance, and there's lightning. I was like, no, there's no way. Like, I believe that wasn't like completely animated, but like, you know, and I actually haven't gotten to that point in the game. Maybe it does look like that.
But see, look, your eye is trained.
But I didn't purchase Witcher because of the way it looked in that one trailer. I purchased Witcher because I'm like, this game looks incredible. You know, like. Sure. Yeah. And I've encountered issues with that game that have nothing to do with like how
that are way worse, like a floating horse that like
right, or like a drowner. I fought one enemy that was literally just like standing there. You know,
but what
like,
you got to realize is that, like, you know, a lot of people don't have a trained eye. Like you and I and Kyle, we've been looking at video game media and playing games for decades. Like, you got to realize, I've probably been reviewing games, like getting paid to evaluate games longer than some of the people on chat have been alive. Right. I mean, think about that.
Yeah,
I mean, we have been in this for a long time, and so we kind of have a trained eye, and some people will say, oh, we're skeptical or pessimistic or whatever, but the fact of the matter is the longer you do this, you start to learn that there's a lot of bullcrap going on, so you do get skeptical. And the truth of that's why I don't pre-order games anymore. It's like, because there's a lot of hoodwinking going on, but you got to realize that there's a lot of kids who are just learning this stuff.
Right.
And, some of them
That's why we're here.
Yeah, and some of them do want a poster on their wall, and so again, there's no easy answer to it, but one recommendation I would make is just stop pre-ordering games, because that is really what is driving this whole process. That's sort of the genesis or the root of it all.
You should have a bullcrap slider on Siftd. It's like, I only want the true trailers. They're like, wait, where'd all the trailers go?
Yeah.
All right, next question.
By the way, that was from tongue surgery. I didn't give the call out there.
Every time, every tongue surgery, killing it with the questions every time.
Yeah, you're right. That was.
He's like first guy to jump in a chat.
The finger on the pulse.
He actually just today 4 months subscribing. So thank you.
Could there be anything worse than tongue surgery? Not the person, the actual act.
I had a the most painful thing that's ever happened to me at a doctor's office was a needle into my toe.
Wait, why? No,
because they had to numb my toe because I had an ingrown.
I'd say please, as opposed to like a needle into your heart.
I just had needles all sorts of weird places, and I just never figured the toe.
The toe, I know. That hurts real bad, huh?
That was rough. That was a centralized pain for sure. You laughing at my toe, Ellis?
It looks like Huber's mashing square. Clearly, just
he is clearly
only square.
It's about to pop out of the controller.
Seth looks really cool.
Yeah, I was gonna say Seth looks like is that his like Blanca outfit? It'd be great if the characters dressed up like other characters.
They did in Street Fighter Cross Tekken. It was awesome.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I really like that kind of
Having
thing.
a blast.
There we go. That's a throw. That's an advanced technique. Our next question is from BarrelBot. Question for Shane. Throughout your years in the industry, have you ever have there been games that you covered in a positive light which you later came to dislike? Equally, are there any games that you think you unfairly overlooked that eventually became favorites of yours?
See, a game that I liked initially that I grew to dislike would probably be Ninja Gaiden 3. I didn't love it when I first played it, but I liked it, and then I went back and played it. I couldn't get through the whole thing again, but I went back to play it again, and I was like, no, I'll never do this. And then they kind of fixed a lot of the stuff for the Wii U version, and I went back and played that, and actually I enjoyed it again. But yeah, that was one game that I feel like I liked it a lot when I first started playing it, and I hated it eventually.
What was missing that second time? Like, would you come back and were like, this is not here anymore? What changed in your heart?
I had loved the Ninja Gaiden franchise just purely for the combat, just the response that's there. I mean, the camera's always kind of tricky in those games, but at the speed that game plays, it's hard to believe that they ever even got it close to working really well. And I just love the reaction in that game. Like, you just feel it. It's like, I don't even know how to explain it, but to me, that's the thing about great games is like you can't explain why they're great. It's like trying to explain why Mario controls perfectly in a 3D Mario game. Like, they've just like nailed that inertia of when you pull that stick the other direction, how long it takes him to do his little slide and stop and then react to go the other way. It's like you can't quantify what it is, and I feel the same way about Ninja Gaiden's combat.
Sure.
And the combat is in the game, and it's still just as deep as it always was. And I think when I first played it, I overlooked a lot of like the quick time stuff because I enjoyed the combat so much. And then once the combat had kind of become rote, I went back and played it again. I think I noticed like the quick time stuff and the other elements a lot more, and they bothered me a lot more.
Yeah. But is there one that you learned to like too on the other side of that?
Man, I don't know. Like, I mean, probably the Souls series in general, because, Ryan Stevens, who used to work with us, he would always come to my office and be like, dude, like, you gotta play this. Like, I cannot believe you don't like these games. Like, I know you. I know what kind of games you like. You like Ninja Gaiden, for God's sake. Like, why don't you like this game? And I'd be like, all right. I'd go home. And, you're so busy when you work at GT. It's like an hour playing a game that you're not evaluating or reviewing is like an hour burned in your life that you're not going to get back. And so I would take the game home, I'd put it in, I'd play it for an hour, I'd be like, not for me still. And so Bloodborne came out, and everyone's like, this is like the kinder, gentler, at least that's what people said before it came out or whatever.
They're wrong.
They were totally wrong, yeah. But the thing about that game is that like the first hour, at least when it first came out, like I feel like they've nerfed it now a little bit, but when it first came out, the first hour of it was just brutal. Like, Literally, like, what would have taken me maybe 3 or 4 minutes to get through in any other video game took me like 5 hours. Like, to beat that first boss, it took me like 5 hours. I'm not even exaggerating.
But you beat him.
I did beat him,
How good did that feel?
It wasn't even like I felt good. It was like a feeling of relief. Like, I'm like, oh, I guess I don't suck at video games.
So
or
you're
maybe
getting,
I do because it took me
you're
5
getting to
hours.
the point where you liked it more, right?
Yeah, so here I didn't
That's
get
what
to
chat
finish.
wants to hear. They all want to hear that you like Bloodborne.
I didn't get to finish what I was saying. What I was saying was, like, everybody kept saying, once you get past that boss, it cracks open and it's not as, like, punishing. And so I beat the boss. I put it down. I'm like, I don't know if I'll ever come back to this game again. And so more and more people kept prodding me, saying, go back, because it does get a little easier after that. And so I went back and played it, and I did actually enjoy the game. I don't have enough time to finish it. Like, I'm probably now 8 hours into it or something like that, but I enjoyed the game. I wouldn't say love, but I enjoy it. And that's more than I could ever say about Demon Souls and the first 2 Dark Souls. So that is definitely a franchise that it kind of turned for me a little bit into something I didn't really like and had no interest in, into something that I actually do have an interest in. And if they make a Bloodborne 2, I'll jump right out of the gate as well.
What do you say, Ian? Is that a victory? He enjoys it.
Bloodborne fans are like crazy. No offense,
I
love you, brother.
I didn't.
It's okay.
I didn't like any of the Souls games, and just totally fell in love with Bloodborne.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I fell in love with it. Like, here's the thing about that game is, like, it's like 40 or 50 hours long, but if it were a normal game, it would last like 7 hours. Like,
But
as far as
not
like
normal.
as far as the amount of like territory and enemies that are in the game, if they weren't impossible and you didn't have to like deliberately plod along and fight them, like, that game wouldn't be very long at all.
But that's what's fun about speedrunning games, is that
Yeah.
it is, you know, like the actual construction of the game isn't necessarily that long. It is that it's that skill required, like, to get through it. So yeah, I'm curious, what have we clocked that, Ian? Like, has anybody, what's like, how fast can you beat one run through? Not a new game plus, but like just starting the game.
It depends on if they do the dupe glitch or not, and it's slower now that they took the forest skip out. But somebody did it in like sub an hour, I think.
Yeah, I've seen like 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Crazy Town.
Yeah.
I did New Game
Dupe
Plus
glitch.
run in like an hour and a half.
Let's sneak in one more question, and then we will wrap things up.
Okay, one last question. Oh, this one I was curious about too. Here we go. This is from Browncoat85. Question for Shane. Was there a topic on Invisible Walls that you felt uncomfortable to cover?
Well, I mean, I think there was a lot of topics on that show where things got uncomfortable as far as like in the room. Because
Like
Marcus and I would go at it pretty good, and like he kind of has, you know, that's why shows with us work really well. Is because we're like polar opposites. Like, he likes completely different games from the games that I like, and he looks at things completely different, just in general, looks at life and everything differently from how I do. And we're kind of like those opposite puzzle pieces that kind of fit together and make like a picture as a whole. And I think that's why Invisible Walls worked for so many years, and I think that's why Game Face is pretty good as well. But I mean, there was just countless topics. Like, I don't know. I mean, in some ways, he's a fan of certain things, and he could never see the other side of it. And so, you know, you host GT Time Now, and part of your job as a host is to kind of be the devil's advocate. And a lot of times it sucks because people think you're like being a jerk, or, you know, you're being a contrarian, but your job is to engender interesting discussion. That's your only job. It's not to make everybody happy who's there. It's not to make all the viewers happy. It's to create discussion that people want to watch.
Yeah.
And you know, people would bang me, oh, you never let people finish. Well, that's because they just droned on for 8 minutes about the same thing, and they didn't realize that they're looping in their brain. And it's like, the other job of a host is to move the conversation along so it doesn't get stuck in this rut, and you don't have somebody sitting there starting to feel uncomfortable because they don't know what else to say. There's a lot that comes along with hosting, and it's a tough job. I'm sure you've had a couple moments where you're like, oh man, like, we need to move this along, and like, someone's not finished talking yet. You have to be the bad guy a lot of times as a host. And so when you're the bad guy, sometimes there's friction that's involved, and you know, I think the one thing that Marcus always brings up was Fallout New Vegas. Like, I hadn't played the game, and he was telling me about the game, and I'm like, okay, well, he says something like, oh, you start out and you're out in the desert. And he's like, it's kind of boring. And I was like, well, how long do you stay out there? And he's like, oh, it probably takes about 10 or 11 hours before you finally go anywhere. And I was like, and you like that? I'm like, the game's called Fallout New Vegas, and you spend half of your time out in the desert not doing anything. And he just like freaked out. And so this has become like this legendary thing of me being the jerk for not liking the game because it took 10 hours to get into Vegas. It's just funny how little things on these shows blow up into these huge like things that go on. Like I still get people like in comments, even on Siftd, I saw a comment about like my Modern Warfare 2 review from like a decade ago.
Yep.
Oh, I can't believe you wanted Modern Warfare 2 to be Game of the Year. Like still, like 10 years later, people are bringing it up. Like it's insane. Like people never let it go. Like they'll always dwell on like one or two things that you did that they don't agree with, instead of looking at the fact that we did literally hundreds of hours of commentary and all the times we nailed it and like got it just right and really gave that insight to our. Nobody cares about that.
It's like goalies.
Yeah.
It's like goalies in soccer that like if it doesn't matter that one goal you suck, get out.
Or it's
and
like
I did the
another
whole
thing.
game, I didn't let anyone. Yeah, but you let that one goal in. You're fired.
It's like there was one conversation we had where we were talking about like I think it was a shooter or whatever, and I said something like, "Oh, the communists fought the Nazis." I never knew that, and like people think I'm like an idiot because of that, because I thought Russia was socialist at that time. But no, I'm an idiot because I didn't know that Russia was. It's like, and people still bring that up like years and years later. It's crazy.
What the question should just be like, what should we tell us something for us to get angry about?
Yeah,
like, that was the question right now.
Like me and Brandon have a thing where we can like insult each other immediately, and I think that's pretty positive. Do you know what I mean? Like we save chat doesn't have to insult us because we're already on top of it.
Right.
You're just beating him to the punch.
Yeah.
Why you were begging for me to cut you off? You know, you're just like, it's your job as the host, and I'm just sitting here like, does he want me to cut him off?
No, I wasn't doing that at all. But I'm just saying, like, the host gets all the grief when you do shows like this because you have to be the bad guy.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's your job to make sure the conversation is interesting.
Well, I'm going to be the bad guy and I'm going to end this damn show.
Okay, all right.
I'm ending the show. All
right.
Don't hate Brandon because of this, by the way.
I'm ending the show. That's my bad guy impression.
Brandon, I think you have too many buttons buttoned up right now.
I do? Okay. All right.
There it is.
There we go.
Okay.
I'm changing it up.
I feel more comfortable now.
I'm like a new man. How are we doing? Before we wrap up the show, Brad, you still in the lead?
Yeah.
Who had the perfect? Who got the perfect?
Ben got a perfect.
Ben got a perfect.
Nice.
Brad's in the lead. They can at least share that. Huber way behind. Wrapping up the show. As we mentioned before, this week we're doing the top 10 live action trailers. We just reviewed Splatoon. That went up this morning. You can check that out. Mr. Ben Moore checked out that game. Of course, we have all of our new shows. Ladies in the Lobby is our new show. The new episode is the third new episode, I believe, this week.
Episode 3.
Episode 3 this week.
It's about the console wars.
That is produced by Elise Williams. A lot of funny ladies in it. You should check it out. Of course, there's all our other shows. You got Huber Hype, Final Bossman, Bonus Round, Mandatory Update, Tabletop Adventures. All new episodes this week. As Shane and I were talking about earlier in the episode, I went to Judges Week last week. Got 2 interviews that we can put up. A bunch of stuff is waiting on embargo, but the stuff you can check out. Interviewed one of the guys, the community manager from Final Fantasy XIV, Heaven's Ward. And I don't know a ton about Final Fantasy XIV. I've played it, but he gave me lots of interesting information. I talked with as many people as I possibly could within the confines of my appointment for Disney Infinity 3.0. Put all of those up.
That interview's up and on Siftd already.
I know, that's the one I saw. I saw the Yoda logo. I was like, all right. And did Just Played on a bunch of other games. We mentioned Mad Max earlier. I played it. I loved it. Wadham, which is the new game from the creator of Katamari Damacy, which is nuts, which demoed really, really well at the event that I went to. Did a Just Played also on Disney Infinity 3.0, and did one on What Remains of Edith Finch, which I played at the same event, which is crazy. It's like a crazy dream of a game, and I don't know when that is coming out, but you should definitely check that out. Tons of more E3 coverage to come from Judges Week. The video is up, and I don't know when the game is coming out.
Got you.
When I say that thing, I should probably
You're promoting videos, not games. Promote your website.
It's true.
I want to point out that the other 35% of indie games are first-person wandering games.
First-person wanderers or side-scrolling with a twist.
Side-scroller with a gimmick or a first-person wandering game.
Feel free to comment about that in the chat.
There's a lot more about like Papers, Please. Yeah, Papers, Please.
Quiet.
Okay.
It's just like Chad. He's just egging you on, man.
Okay, I know. Yep, I got egged on.
Deep
I got
breath,
egged on.
Count to 3.
Okay.
Awesome more coverage, not only of E3 coming up, but we got lots of fun things in store, but more stuff coming out of Judges Week that I checked out last week. Also want to mention that you can still donate to Operation Supply Drop that goes through the entire month of May. They're doing a campaign right now, Smack, called 8-Bit Salute, where they raise money to give video games to the troops so they can play stuff and be entertained while they were overseas and they're, fighting for us. So it'd be nice to do something nice for them. The campaign is still going. Our page is still active. You can search for our team game trailers and you can donate for me. And you can pick one person and you can send a donation. I believe they still haven't met their goal. And it'd be nice to see that happen. You can go to Facebook and Twitter and you can follow us on there. You can subscribe to us on Twitch on the page you're at right now. We have 2 YouTube channels, GameTrailers and youtube.com/c/GT Reviews. That's where Just Blades and event coverage and all that stuff goes up, and where these episodes go up if you want to see this episode later. You can visit GameTrailers.com. Thank you guys for screaming at each other and for playing. Are we all still friends? After playing Street Fighter for an hour?
We're more friends than ever, Brandon.
Sure doesn't look like
you commented before the show started. You're like, if we just do matches, that'll be boring for an hour. Were you able to entertain yourself for an hour of Ultra Street Fighter 4?
Yes.
Any glitches? We've heard all sorts of terrible things. Stuttering animations and sound effects going awry. Nothing happened.
People were saying on Gaff and stuff that it just doesn't feel quite right, but they weren't able to articulate it. And I'm like, well, that doesn't sound very credible. I think they're right. Something feels off. I can't put my finger on it.
You've been putting your finger on it for a whole hour now.
Yeah, that's true.
I've been hearing lots of fingers being put on things.
It does have a weird black outline on the characters that I don't like.
Oh, really?
They have like shadows, and so they look like little 2D paper characters on top of a shadow.
I just wanted it totally to break.
It's
I literally.
the ink
you wanted to
gone wrong, right?
break it live.
I wanted to break it right behind Shane there, but never happened. Thank you so much, Mr. Satterfield, for coming on GT Live.
Always a pleasure to come back around, you guys.
You should promote your thing too.
Yeah,
at the end of the show.
And what's of course Game Face tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow at 6 o'clock, twitch.tv/Siftd Games, every Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific, and then it gets archived on siftd.net after that.
And for those who haven't seen it, in front of them, it's Siftd. Just take the E out. You don't need that E.
Yep.
You're sifting the E. You begin with the low.
I already took the E.
Oh boy. While you were skateboarding. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you next week. Take care.
See ya.